The story begins with a common magician who is brutally killed by all the royals in his past life. They first throw his belongings out of his house and tell him, "Before I die, I want you to attack me with your most powerful magic." When that sorcerer attacks with his magic is so weak that it disintegrates before reaching the royals. Seeing this, all the people standing there make fun of him and say, "A worthless person like you has no right to live. Your existence is an insult to magic." They then attack him with a fireball, killing him instantly. In the next scene, his eye opens and he finds himself in a plush place, surrounded by beautiful tables. But seeing him, he gets scared, because those people seem to him as big as monsters. He uses magic to protect himself, but this time his same fireball is so powerful that it blows up the entire roof. At the same time, everyone in the empire is celebrating the birth of the 7th prince of the Kingdom of Solomon, who is named Lloyd. All the maids are horrified to see the broken roof in the castle, and Lloyd does not even understand what is happening. A few years pass. In the castle, the maids are searching for Lloyd, while he is hiding and running away. Then 2 generals come in front of him. They say to him, "We will not tell the maids that we saw you, but will you go hunting with us?" Lloyd runs away from there without answering. The 2 generals talk. One says, "This prince has run away again. What is the use of making friends with it? Its number will never come to become a king." The second general replies, "Are you stupid? He began to speak only a few days after birth, and he is reading magic books instead of ordinary books. I think this is the reincarnation of the great magician William." Lloyd remembered his past life, but it didn't matter to him. He just wanted to learn new magic. He goes to the library and starts reading books, but then a warrior named Silpha comes looking for him. Silpha teaches him swordsmanship, and Lloyd gives him a good beating. Lloyd says, "I'm the 7th prince. My number to become king will not come. Then what do I need to learn all this?" Being a king is not everything. A prince has many other duties. Silpha had been teaching Lloyd sword fighting for 3 years. Lloyd knew that if he didn't practice properly today, Silpha would keep him training through the night. He uses magic to secure his victory and fights a magical copy of himself by imitating Silpha. Silpha recognizes his cunning, but admires that he is using multiple enchantments at once. Lloyd is heartbroken that Silpha didn't catch all of his tricks. One day, Lloyd is excited to visit the Forbidden Library, where a terrible monster named Grimoire was imprisoned in a sealed book. There was a powerful seal on the door of the library, which Lloyd easily breaks and gets inside. There, a book flies to him, and a strange creature comes out of it, which says, "I am Grimoire. Set me free. I'll give you lots of gold." "Your magic is poor," says Lloyd. "This gold is made of clay." Grimoire lures him that if he sets him free, he will teach him ancient magic, which has been lost for centuries. Lloyd succumbs to this temptation and frees her. Grimoire immediately attacks Lloyd, but none of his magical powers can harm Lloyd. Lloyd is simply delighted at her every effort and demands to see even more magic. Grimoire couldn't believe he couldn't beat a little kid. At the same time, Lloyd was very happy to see the magic of Grimoire. He grabbed the magic with one of his fingers and laughed. "So this is how it works." After this, he removed that attack by blowing, but the condition of his finger had deteriorated. Still, he laughed and said to Grimoire, "Let's go and magic will appear." Seeing this, Grimoire's anger increased, and he attacked with even greater force. But Lloyd's barrier remained unbroken. Lloyd found this spell very interesting, because it was spoken with 2 mouths simultaneously, and only those who had 2 mouths could use it. Grimoire was tired of constantly using his magic, but he saw that Lloyd's barrier was still in place. He shouted, "It's impossible! My attack was so powerful!" "You're right, it was really powerful," smiled Lloyd. "That would be fun to learn, wouldn't it? By the way, how many more spells do you get?" Hearing this, Girish was shocked. He wondered if it was a child or the devil's child. In panic, he tried to run away, but he hit Lloyd's barrier. He thought, how many barriers has this child put up? Lloyd covered all the important things in the library with a barrier. Then when Grimoire tried another attack, Lloyd stopped him, saying, "It's too much now. Now I'll attack you, and you show me your defense magic." Lloyd attacked Grimoire with a dangerous fireball, and because Grimoire was inside the barrier, he began to burn. "Why didn't you use defense magic?" asked Lloyd. The Grimoire was wondering, who is this child and who lost it here? Then Lloyd made the whole library as before. Grimoire was astonished and said, "How wonderful you are, Master Lloyd." Lloyd wondered, "You're calling me master?" Grimoire replied, "Yes, I have never seen such a great magician as you." Lloyd smiled and said, "You're awesome too. It seems that demons can't be killed by magic, but it hurts, right?" Hearing this, I was shocked. "I want to know how much pain you can bear?" asked Lloyd. "Please, sir, forgive me," said Grimoire, trembling with fear. "I will be your servant. I will accept everything." All right, Lloyd said with a laugh. It was then that Grimoire realized that his condition had become like that of a lab rat. In order not to attract people's attention while going out, he turned himself into a cute thing. He said to Lloyd, "You've never seen anything so cute in your life." He was thinking that if he could not conquer Lloyd with his cuteness, then at least he would control him. Lloyd told him to get in his pocket, and Grimoire thought that the closer he was, the easier it would be to control Lloyd. But when he tried to control Lloyd, he realized that Lloyd's mind was too dense and he couldn't do anything. Grimoire was horrified to see this. "Why are you shivering?" asked Lloyd. Grimoire said, "No, nothing, boss. You can call me Grim." The next day, Lloyd's older brother Albert came to call him for training. Albert destroyed all the targets with his fireball, and people began to praise him. Lloyd tells Grimoire that Albert is the second prince of the kingdom of Solemn and that he is very intelligent and physically capable. People see him as the next king. When Lloyd's turn came, instead of destroying the targets, he used the fireball curve and just touched all the targets. A man mocks Lloyd after seeing that he just touched the targets. Albert understands everything, but he says nothing, and while leaving says, "I'm going to take a break," and gives Lloyd free rein to do whatever he wants. Lloyd is delighted to hear this and says he wants to do a double incantation of the Grimoire. "It's impossible for you," says Grimoire, "because it can only be done by demons with two mouths." Hearing this, Lloyd says, "I know," and absorbs the Grimoire into his hands. The two then begin the incantation of the advanced magic spell together. Grim is horrified and does not understand what is happening. Lloyd explains that it was just a spell stack with 100 incantations in one go. "You're crazy! There are maximum 3-4 spells in a stack and you are using 100. But Lloyd silences him. He and Grim begin to incantation at the same time. Lloyd realizes that if he fires it, there will be a great catastrophe, but at that moment he turns his magic towards the sky. At the same time, a man asks Albert, "Why are you paying so much attention to the Saint Prince? He's talented, but he's just a kid." Albert replies, "Perhaps you didn't notice Lloyd had hit all the targets and he just touched them. He is a prodigy and could become a grand sage in the future." When the man looks outside the window, he sees holes in the sky. Lloyd quickly uses his magic to bring the sky back to normal. "Who is this boy?" he asked. It shot up into the sky. The next day, the newspaper publishes Lloyd's antics. At the same time, Grim reads that a group of adventurers is clearing the dungeons and extracting valuable items and powerful artifacts. Hearing this, Lloyd says, "Let us also go to clear the dungeons." But Grim stops him. "If you leave, everyone here will be upset." "I've done that too," he says. He calls an Akon and makes him like himself with magic. Lloyd explains that it not only looks like me, but its energy circulation and movements are also like me. "You can leave it here," says Grim. But Lloyd says, "It's not so easy. The biggest problem is the silos." She also notices a 0.007 mm increase in my height. Lloyd then absorbs Grim's body and puts his mind into the mannequin. Lloyd himself goes from there. Upon coming out, he gets into the idea of looking for dungeons. That's when he sees that there are many monsters behind a girl. Seeing this, Grim says, "Maybe she needs help." But the girl destroys the monsters. "Warrior" is written on his clothes. Grimm guesses that he is a martial artist. Lloyd realizes that she is using the girl's ki, which is why her techniques are so brilliant. The girl looks at Lloyd and asks, "Who are you? And what are you doing here?" Lloyd changes his appearance using illusion magic and tells him his name is Robert, saying, "I'm a new adventurer." He combined his brother Albert's appearance with his own. Because this magic can be used to look like the same people she has ever seen before, then the girl describes herself as a martial artist and B-rank hunter. Lloyd, who we now know as Robert, is a little nervous when he meets Cow because he's afraid that Cow won't recognize him. However, Cav is completely attracted to Robert. She thought, "This is so cute." Cow had spent 18 years of her life training, and now she was out to build new relationships. But because of her interesting choice of clothes and bold style, boys used to run away from her. However, this time she has decided that she will make Robert her boyfriend. After this, the two go to a dungeon, where Cow easily kills all the monsters. She jokingly asks Robert, "You fell in love with me after seeing my Dole Cholet, right?" But Robert does not pay attention to him and quietly continues to collect bright stones. Here we get to know that Cow was adventuring alone so far because she had not found a good partner yet. At dinner, Robert asks Cow, "Was the technique you were using earlier a ki technique?" Cav wonders how Robert knows about Kai, because most people on this continent don't know anything about Kai. Cow tells her that breathing techniques are the most important to use the ki. It takes years of breathing practice just to feel the Kai. Robert tries to imitate Cow's breathing technique, but after a while his lungs begin to ache, causing him to stop. Cav asks her, "You were using breathing techniques?" Robert replies, "Yes, I was just imitating you." Cow is surprised to hear that he learned it so quickly just by watching. She tries to stop him, as it could be dangerous, but Robert keeps doing the breathing technique. Gradually, Robert begins to feel the energy of Kai as well, and realizes that it is going to be of use to him. Seeing Robert's enthusiasm, Cow says, "If you're really interested, I'll teach you." Robert thanks her, and seeing her smile, Chow falls for her again. Then she says shyly, "Keep breathing until we get out of the dungeons." On the other hand, Silpha approaches Grimm at the castle, and Grimm is horrified to see her. At the same time, in dungeons, Cow defeats the boss of dungeons using her blast technique, allowing them to open the treasure chest. But Robert's attention is not on this. He's thinking about how these dungeons were created. When the treasure chest opens, Robert immediately realizes that they are about to be attacked. He pulls the crow back and sees a leech popping out of the chest. Robert asks Cow about Leech, but Cow tells him, "Don't worry, you go out." But Robert wants to see the fight. The crow quickly uses a technique that causes Robert to fly backwards. He knew it would hurt Robert, but it was better than dying. Cow couldn't figure out how Leech got into a low-level dungeon because sometimes even A-rank hunters aren't enough to fight Leech. She thinks she can give Robert time to get out by fighting Leech for a while. Robert, on the other hand, is still flying in the air and wondering what to do next. He has to learn more about Kai and also about dungeons. Meanwhile, Grimm is also nervous and cries, "Please, man, come quickly and save me." Cow is fighting Leech, but she realizes she can't fight Leech. She is convinced that if she keeps fighting, her death is certain. She thinks Robert may have gotten out by now, so she tries to sneak away, but then Leech sees him and says, "Wow, you can use the Kai technique." I had eaten someone before who had similar abilities. Kai is a lower form of magic. Leech explains that he has eaten the souls of many adventurers, from whom he has gained their techniques and knowledge. Leech doesn't think Cow is worth eating, but he wants to eat Robert because he dodged Leech's attack so quickly. The Cow begins to attack the Leech again. Leech builds a powerful barrier, but Chow constantly attacks him and eventually breaks it down. Cow had broken Leech's barrier with all his strength, but as soon as he broke the barrier, all his energy was gone. She couldn't even move now. Then Leech came up behind him and mocked him, saying, "You seem to have wasted your whole life. Your ki is not even equal to one of my fingers." He performed a magic attack on Cow, but just then, Lloyd arrived and saved him. Leech was about to attack Cow again, but suddenly Lloyd appeared behind him. Leech was surprised to see how Lloyd moved so fast. Lloyd had used a special magic which was shocking to Leech. Lloyd was not only using magic, he was also using the breathing technique of Kai. He was trying to mix mana and Kai, and he had built a powerful barrier over himself. Leech applied his full force, but his attack could not break Lloyd's barrier. After a while, the pressure of the breathing technique began to increase on Lloyd, and he removed the barrier. Leech felt that he had broken Lloyd's barrier with his strength, and he became confident and began to attack Lloyd again. But Lloyd was now dodging all of Leech's attacks by making skillful use of the ki and the mana. Gradually, Lloyd had mastered mixing Kai and mana. Leech once again attacked Lloyd from all sides, but Lloyd neutralized all his attacks with his powerful technique. Lloyd then combined with Kai and mana to launch a deadly attack, which Leech was unable to stop. Leech locked himself in the barrier once again, but Lloyd's final attack was so powerful that he finished Leech off inside the barrier. Lloyd and Cow opened the treasure box, but only a small knife came out of it. Cow didn't find anything special about the knife, but Lloyd thought there must be something special about it. So he told Cow that he wanted to keep it with him, and Cow agreed. Eventually, it was Lloyd who defeated the monster. As soon as the treasure box was opened, the walls of the dungeons began to shake, and the whole dungeon began to tremble. Cow explained that whenever the treasure box is taken, the dungeons start falling on their own. Hearing this, Lloyd said, "So that means this treasure chest was the core of the dungeons, and I'm going to take it with me." The treasure box slowly began to sink into the ground, and the dungeons began to fall. Lloyd and Cow managed to get out quickly. Coming out, Cow asked, "You are a table, so why did you use the key technique?" Cow thought Lloyd would have used the key because of Leech's disrespect, but Lloyd replied, "No, there was nothing like that. I used the key because it seemed fun." Cow then told Lloyd that the technique he had used to defeat Leech was called the Key Blade. At the moment, she had not mastered this technique, but she wanted to improve her skills even more so that she could become a better fighter. Arriving at Lloyd's house, he learned that Grimm's condition had worsened. "Your teacher is the executioner, man," cried Grimm. We see that Grimm was training with Silpha, but Silpha had beaten him badly. She wondered how Grimm had suddenly become so weak. "I guess I'll have to train you some more," Silpha told Grimm, and then he killed her. Meanwhile, Lloyd wanted to experiment a bit with his newfound knife. He put that knife in hot water and saw that enchantments were made on it. Enchantment magic increases the power of weapons. Lloyd began to study the enchantments of that knife, and he decided to extract all the supposed essences from the knife and use them for himself. For this, he needed many things, so he went to his father and asked for silver coins. Her father jokingly asked, "Don't you want gold coins?" But Lloyd said, "No, silver coins are fine," and went from there. His father wondered what Lloyd would spend all that money on. In his room, Lloyd melted down all the silver coins and combined them with a knife to create a new magic weapon. He started training with Silpha again. Lloyd attacked rapidly, but the attack was too slow for Silpha. Silpha dodged his attack and then used her magic to flatten the ground. Lloyd attacked again, but Silpha was already under him and easily defeated him. Silpha gave Lloyd a bottle of oil. "But the deal was I'd have to land an attack on you first." Silpha smiled and said, "Never mind, I'm glad you've done yourself better." Lloyd took his oil and went to his room and mixed it with hematite, which gave him the mana essence. Lloyd then went to his friend Albert and said that he needed some more weapons for the enchantments. Albert was happy to hear it, and he says, "You are going to do something very lovely." He then tells all his guards, "Would anyone like to get their weapons enchanted by this dear brother of mine?" All the guards throw down their weapons, but the sadness is clearly visible on their faces because their swords were brand new. Enchantment magic is very difficult to do, and a 10-year-old child was not at all expected to be able to do it. The guards were convinced that their swords would be destroyed. After this, Lloyd started doing enchantments on weapons. Grimm was surprised to see that Lloyd was casting one power level raising spell after another. He put so many formulas on the same sword that the sword broke. Seeing this, Lloyd understood that the metal of the sword could not tolerate so many formulas. He realized how difficult the task was, but he was there to encourage her. Lloyd breaks several swords in the process of enchantment, but a few are saved. A few days later, he returns those weapons. He tells Albert that 50 of the 120 weapons have succeeded and apologizes for breaking 70 of the weapons. In fact, 80 weapons were successful, but Lloyd tried to apply even more formulas to them, reducing the number from 80 to 50. Albert is shocked to hear this because a first-grade enchanter has a success rate of just 10%, and Lloyd had successfully enchanted so many weapons. All the soldiers could not believe it. They thought Lloyd had given up by destroying 70 swords. But as soon as a soldier puts his sword in the sheath itself is cut. Grimm sees this and says, "Look, the edge of your sword has become so sharp that the sheath itself has been cut." Albert was also surprised to see his sword. Lloyd then tells Albert that he wants to see these weapons used in battle. Albert asks him to join him in the monster hunt. After all the preparations are over, Lloyd, Silpha, and Albert leave early in the morning. They soon reach the forest that the kingdom was surrounded by. Lloyd was quite excited and asks, "Are the monsters around?" "No, you'll have to wait a little longer to see the monsters," says Silpha. Silpha then thanks Albert for allowing her to move in with Lloyd. Albert says, "I had no reason to dissuade Silpha from coming along, and I know how much she cares about Lloyd anyway." Silpha may have had some feelings, but she didn't want to have any inappropriate thoughts about Lloyd, especially until he was 18. Albert pulls his leg slightly, but when Silpha pulls out her sword, he realizes that he must keep quiet. But Silpha didn't pull out the sword because it was pulling her leg. He took out the sword because some monsters had come in front of them. These were kobolds, who also had weapons. All the knights come into formation to rescue Albert and Lloyd. Lloyd has to act like he's scared so that no one suspects him. But in fact, Lloyd already knew that the kobolds were coming to his side. He had learned a special technique by which he could guess his surroundings using the key as long as he was using the breathing technique. Lloyd was watching everything closely as the battle of the knights and the kobolds had now begun. But no one was prepared for what happened next, neither the knights nor Lloyd. Kobold cut straight in half. Everyone was surprised, because Kobold was wearing steel armor. All this was due to Lloyd's enchantment. Their swords were now so sharp that they were difficult to handle, and the knights were also panicking. Albert is full of praise for Lloyd, and Silpha is full of praise for Lloyd's enchantment, even though Lloyd did not enchant his weapon. But he didn't think he needed to. Just then, a kobold suddenly attacks Lloyd. Before Kobold can harm him, a familiar face kicks him and throws him away. It was Ta, who had rushed here after sensing the presence of an attractive personality in the area. Lloyd couldn't believe his eyes, as he was pretty sure he would never face this girl again. To approaches him and realizes that Lloyd was sensing his surroundings using his breathing technique. He couldn't understand where Lloyd had learned the technique. That's when she sees that Lloyd and Robert's faces are very similar. She was watching him closely when she suddenly realized that a kobold was about to attack her from behind. But before she can do anything, Silpha already cuts her off. Silpha was not happy at all, seeing an unknown girl so close to her potential husband. "I don't need your help," she said. It's clear that there's never going to be a line between the two. Albert tries to calm the two down and proposes that they walk to the lake together. At night, when everyone is setting up camp, Albert thanks Tav for helping him fight the kobolds. At the same time, he introduces himself as the second Prince of Solemn. Tao did not know that Albert was from the royal family, so she apologizes for her rude behavior. But more importantly, Albert seemed attractive to Tao. She tries to convince herself that even though this person looks like Robert, it's not Robert. During the conversation, Albert asks her, "Do I look like the person you're looking for?" Tav replies, "Yes, but Lloyd looks more like him than you." Lloyd, on the other hand, keeps his distance from Tav so that he does not discover that he is actually Robert. He was almost caught using the technique of special detection, but now To knew that Lloyd could use this technique, so if Lloyd had not used it, there would have been more suspicion. So Lloyd decided that he would stay in his tent. But as soon as he goes to the tent, he is attacked by throwing oranges on his face. Lloyd didn't care because he'd seen Silpha before. "What are you doing here?" he asks. Silpha apologizes and says that she was changing her clothes because they were stained with blood, but it is not clear why she was changing clothes in Lloyd's tent. "It's only natural, because I'm going to sleep here," Silpha says. Lloyd doesn't like that. Silpha tries to explain to him, "The rest of the guards will be guarding Albert's tent, so I'll stay here and protect you." But Lloyd says that he will remain alone, and nothing will happen to him. But Silpha was in no mood to listen, and she grabs Lloyd by the leg so he can't get out. She didn't want him to take it away from her. Just then, Tav comes into the tent, because he had realized Lloyd, Robert, was using his key-sensing technology. When Tav sees Silpha holding Lloyd, she angrily says, "What are you doing with this boy?" Silpha was also angry that Toe had spoiled her and Lloyd's private time. The two begin to say insulting words to each other, and it is clear that they are about to fight. On the other hand, all the knights were eager to see this fight, and the reason for this eagerness was clear. But Lloyd quietly slips away from there. Albert laughs at her and says, "You're from Itu, but you already have girls fighting for you." I don't think it's funny at all. Albert tells Lloyd that since Silpha started taking care of him, she has changed a lot. But he also warns Lloyd that he has to be very cautious in relationships with girls like Silpha. On the other hand, Silpha and Tav also understand that all the knights are eagerly waiting for their fight and are watching their every move. Seeing this, both of them burst out laughing. Afterwards, Tav reveals that she has been tasked with fixing a nearby shrine. Silpha says, "You go do your work so I can spend time with Lloyd." Just then, Albert comes there and says that going to the mountain can be dangerous for the time being. Anyway, Tav's special sensing ability can help him a lot, so he wants Tav to stay with the group until morning. Just then, Tav senses a threat and says, "We don't need scouting anymore because the monster we were looking for has now come to us." When the bear wolf starts moving towards everyone, all the knights come into their formation. But Lloyd only comes after Silpha because he does not want this fight to end quickly again. Given its size, this monster was quite sharp, but Grimm's focus is more on the shrine atop the mountain than the monster itself. On the other hand, the battle continues, and one knight is saved by Tav from his own key blast, but that doesn't hurt the wolf much. Now, Albert comes forward to fight that wolf. Albert takes out Lloyd's sword and casts a spell with it that completely destroys the wolf. All the knights begin to admire the prince's strength, but the spell would not have been so powerful if Lloyd had not enchanted his sword. Albert thanks Lloyd for making it so easy to defeat the wolf. Then Grimm tells him that there is something more dangerous, which is going to fix the shrine. There is a demon sealed inside him, and that seal is now very weak. Just then the bear wolf, whom Albert had defeated, rises again, and this time he was surrounded by mail from all sides. There are many other monsters around him. A voice speaks to them through the wolf, who says, "How dare you kill my soldiers?" The one who was speaking through the wolf was a demon, and his name is Izuju. He swears that he will kill them all and orders all his minions to attack. Albert injures a wolf, but the next moment his wound heals, and he nearly eats Albert. But he comes and saves her. But he could not fight for long, because those wolves were able to heal all their injuries instantly, no matter how much they were injured. All are fighting for their lives, but Silpha is just standing in one place watching, because she doesn't care what happens to anyone as long as Lloyd is safe. Lloyd asks Grimm if he knows Pajos. Grimm says that he has never met her in his life, but seeing her, he can tell that Pijju is using his magic to control them all like puppets. To control them, he has made threads from magic, and through those threads he is supplying mana to all of them. This fight won't end until they kill Pajos. But Lloyd has stopped listening since he heard about mana transmutation, and he wants Grimm to teach him how to use it. Grimm doesn't think it's the right time to teach this stuff, because it's built on other people's lives. But Lloyd is more interested in learning new magic than the death of his friends and family, so he wants Grimm to teach him this magic right now. At the same time, Juju's laughter is not stopping, because he was not having any difficulty in fighting these humans. But when he insults Lloyd because he thinks he's a coward, Silpha's head turns. She tells Lloyd that he has to leave you for a while, but Lloyd is so caught up in his transmutation lessons that he doesn't care what's going on around him. Silpha goes to fight in front of him and says that even being in front of him is painful for all her senses, because he is ugly, smells dirty, his voice is ugly, and because Lloyd is here, she can't let the environment around him stink anymore. Pajos found her threats childish because she didn't think she could defeat him with just one sword. All the wolves are under his control, and he will always be healed as long as he continues to supply mana. Deem almost never has a mana finish, but in response to all this, Silpha simply says, "Can you stop speaking? The smell of your breath is doing more damage to my nose than any attack." Pajos immediately attacks Silpha, but by the time Pajos realizes what happened here, he has all of the bear wolf's leg wrapped around him. Pajos starts to heal his wolf's feet, but while he is healing, everyone else realizes that the rest of the wolves have slowed down a lot, because Pajos was focusing on healing his wolf. Albert tells Silpha to damage Pajos like she just did so that she can quickly eliminate the rest of the wolves. In the midst of all this, Lloyd is learning more things about transmutation. Grimm says that this technique is very difficult to use, and Pajos is very talented, which is why he is able to control so many monsters at once. On the other hand, Silpha again injures Pajo. Afterwards, she asks the knight next to her for her sword, and is a little amused to see the sword, as it was done and Chantal by Lloyd. But as Pajos learns of Silpha's obsession with Lloyd, he begins to talk about how he will kill Lloyd and cut out all of his organs to research what makes him so special. Hearing this, Shilpa gets angry. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Pajoj eats her alive. But Silpha starts biting him from inside his mouth. After this, she cuts off the head of the wolf, but her anger was still not quenched. She then uses another dull welding technique to remove the demon from Wolf's body. Everyone was surprised at how strong Silpha was, but Lloyd wasn't surprised at all because he knew how strong Silpha was. Pajos had spoken to Silpha about taking Lloyd's life, for which Silpha could never forgive him. He proceeds to take her life. Silpha tells Pajos to obey, but Pajos laughs at her stupidity and releases poisonous mana all over his mouth. On the other hand, Albert and Tav defeat the monsters, but they can still be healed because Damon was still alive. It is only then that they are engulfed by poisonous mana and become unconscious. Ta quickly escapes by holding her breath, but Silpha is unable to escape and falls unconscious. Pajos gets angry because he had defeated all those monsters 100 years ago and had come out of his seal. Just then, he suddenly attacks Silpha. Albert wants to help him, but he was not able to move his body. She couldn't understand what was happening. At the same time, he tells Demon Silpha that whoever inhales his mana of domination will come under his control. "Well, that's why it smelled so bad," Silpha says. Pajoj angrily goes to attack her, but Tav comes and saves her. Tav stands between Silpha and the monster and asks Silpha if she can fight. Silpha is shivering badly from the cold and still says, "I don't need your help." Tao tells Silpha, "If you can move, get out of here." But Silpha pleads with him, "No, you save Lloyd and take him away from here." After this, Silpha also faints. Pajaz compliments Silpha that she is very strong because she was the closest to him when he released his mana. Then suddenly, Pajaj reaches behind the toe and asks him, "Why are you not affected by my refusal?" Tav attacks her, but she easily dodges his attack. He then realizes that Toe is using a special breathing technique so that he cannot absorb her mind. Pajoj tells him, "You should have run away from here seeing your time." Then he thinks, "Is it not that I find you so sexy that you want to join me?" Thinking about this, Tav's mind goes haywire because she couldn't imagine herself joining such an ugly creature. She tells him, "I have found my man." After this, she performs a very dangerous electric attack. But due to such a big attack, her breathing goes out of control, so she first wants to control her breathing back. But then a monster attacks him. Pajoj asks him, "Which of these men have you chosen?" "There is no one to stand in front of me." After this, Pajoj releases even more of his mana so that he can control Tav's body as well. But Tao says, "I can feel my future husband nearby and I will never be under your control." Pajoj thinks she's making a bunch of crap, and he spits down and says, "You are just an ordinary human being. I'm no longer interested in you." Then he goes to punish Silpha for misbehaving. He wants to corrupt Silpha to replace his dead monsters. He knows it will take time to do so, but given Silpha's strength, it will prove beneficial to his plan. As Pajo ponders how to bring Silpha under his control and become his eternal slave, Lloyd discovers how Pajo was controlling the bear wolves. I killed the parents of these bear wolves when I was a kid, so they think of me as their parent and believe everything I say, Pajo says. That's when he sees Lloyd standing in his mana without any trouble. He asks her, "Why are you not affected by my control over you?" So he says that I just rejected your mana, then recognizing Giramore and saying, "Oh, you are also a demon na. What do you think, you will become this cute thing, then I will not know?" He starts making fun of Grim. Grim gets angry and says, "Don't worry, you'll know why I'm with a man." But Pajo does not take his words seriously and orders all his monsters to attack them. "This is the perfect place to try a mana transmission," says Lloyd. Lloyd Mana could create anything using transmutation, and he needed a lot of mana for what he wanted to create. He makes a flower garden where all the monsters begin to behave calmly. After this, Lloyd gets control of all these demons. He couldn't believe his eyes. After this, Lloyd asks a bearwolf to spawn the toe back. Pajo thinks Lloyd is an expert sorcerer because he immediately created a flower garden. Afterwards, Pajo and Mana use their powers to control the bear wolves, but Grim says, "Now we know how you used to control them." All the monsters attack Pajo, due to which Silpha escapes from his clutches. Lloyd was surprised to see how coordinated all the wolves were moving. "My teammates don't walk in such a coordinated manner, they just wander around in the BGMEA every day." But he gets angry when he sees those wolves attacking him. He starts beating them badly because he was not supplying his mana to any wolf. Now he could show his full strength. After this, Pajo says, "I will eliminate both of you. I can't die from magic no matter how much mana you use." It reminds Lloyd, "Oh yes, even Grim said that demons cannot be completely eliminated by magic." Pajo is releasing all his magic power. At the same time, Lloyd is confused by how no one has yet finally eliminated the demon using mana. He wants to find out how much more mana a demon can finally endure. Lloyd also starts to use all his strength, but seeing his strength, Pajo's morale is broken. Grim is thinking, "Now you know why my mother doesn't work at Lloyd's. Thanks to Buju, because thanks to him he can try many of his spells." At the same time, Pajo is just trying to get up seeing her strength because he thinks it's all a bad dream. Lloyd tries to cast a barrier over Pajo, but Pajo is shocked. "You're going to get me out of here, right? You're a crazy kid, just let me go." Pajo also notices that Lloyd has also experimented on the bearwolf because they looked different than before. "You don't need to worry," he said. "You yourself said that magic will have no effect on you." Then he starts charging a serial spell. Out of fear, Pajo starts saying that when I take over the world, you take half of it. No, not half. You take more than half. Just let me go. Juju's condition is bad because he fears that he might actually die. To date, users as powerful as Lloyd did not attack him. Lloyd attacks him using all the elements, and inside the barrier he is releasing 240 spells per minute. He decides that he will keep this combination going for 30 minutes because it is so beautiful to look at. After a while, he calls out to Pudge, but Pudge doesn't answer, so Lloyd thinks he's not really dead. He's disappointed because Pudge couldn't stand his attack for even 5 minutes. Grim says that demons are not immune to magic, but have high resistance to their magic. If they are constantly attacked, they can also be killed. Juju Bachara is sad because his thousands of years of hard work was ended by a child. After that, everyone starts to get excited. Lloyd also escapes from there and reaches his brother. At the same time, Grim is telling Payos that now you know why I follow him. And I also want to take revenge from him, so I'm just gathering strength and waiting for my chance. Anyway, Lloyd enjoys his life, so I'm enjoying hanging out with him. After this, Pajos' body turns into ash, and Grim absorbs it, further increasing his strength. Grim thinks he's ready for his rematch with Lloyd now, but then he thinks, no, there's plenty of time right now. At the same time, Lloyd tells everyone that Robert came and defeated the demon. Hearing this, Tav starts searching where he has gone. Afterwards, they arrive back at the kingdom, where King praises Albert for defeating the demon and all of his monsters. But they also tell him that you put your younger brother's life in danger. This shouldn't happen again. They ask him who it is that helped you. Albert reveals that Robert helped them, but before they could thank him, he left. And Ta also leaves to find her future husband. At the same time, Albert tells King that Lloyd also had a big hand in this fight, and he requests King to give Lloyd the right to contest for King's throne. Because it was because of Lloyd's weapons that those monsters didn't take their lives. He says Lloyd is perfect to be king. He knows that he is only increasing his competition by doing this, but for the good of the kingdom, he should become the king who is the best. King asks Lloyd if he wants to fight for King's throne, but Lloyd flatly refuses without any emotion. Afterwards, Lloyd is playing in the courtyard with a bear wolf, which has followed him all the way. At the same time, Grim and the bear feel jealous of seeing Lloyd up close with the wolf, and he makes himself fluffy so that Lloyd can pet him too, but after a while it gets there. So Lloyd hides Grim in Shiro's hair. Lloyd tells Silpha that he has named it Shiro, but he doesn't know how he will teach things to Shiro. Silpha explains that she can instruct monsters using magic. At the same time, Grim thinks that this is a wonderful guy. He is only interested in magic. It also rejected the king's throne. King thinks it's Lloyd's big pawn that he turned down the throne, but Albert thinks Lloyd is probably going to do bigger things than this kingdom. After this, Lloyd was playing with the lions when he was giving him simple commands. He easily understands him. But Lloyd says that he does not understand even a little difficult commands. After this, he uses a command spell on her, but Shiro gets confused and starts doing the opposite direct movements. After this, Lloyd starts thinking that he has to learn from someone who is an expert in this field. The name of his sister, Elise, comes straight to his mind. After this, they all go to meet Princess Elise. When Grim asks, Lloyd tells him that Elise is his older sister and the 6th princess of the kingdom. We see that he has kept many friendly monsters in his garden. Suddenly, she snaps at Lloyd and says how happy she is to meet him, and also gives him a kiss.